Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we have a little bit of a special review. This is going to be review number 3,333, which means we are halfway to review number 6,666, which is probably going to be the most satanic number of review that we will have on the channel. Heavy metal and all of that. But yeah, I thought this one was worth kind of celebrating a little bit. So for all of the support that you guys have shown the channel over the last 9.5 years, a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart. It really is very humbling to see something that I just kind of started as a little bit of a hobby actually grow to be quite popular. And you know, there will be many more reviews and out and about videos, meet the brewers and things like that over the years to come. We'll just need to see where life takes me, and of course the beer and the channel will be included in that. So stay tuned, and I hope you guys continue to enjoy the videos, and thank you again for all your support. But to celebrate this sort of mini milestone review, we have a beer which I think will be very fitting. So this one is one of my favourite beer styles. It is a style that is not often brewed in Sweden, and this is a brewery who I know do the malty side of things very well. So needless to say, I'm pretty curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Nyköpping, which is a little bit to the south of Stockholm, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Nils Bryggeri. So this particular beer is called Wee Heavy. It comes in at 8% ABV, and as the name might tell you, this is going to be some kind of Scotch ale, and we'll figure out exactly what kind of Scotch ale it is when we actually taste the thing. But yeah, this is a beer that they seem to brew at least once a year, and it was released at some point through Systembolaget. I'm not sure exactly how long I've had this beer, but it has been sitting for a wee bit, so it should be nice and kind of mellowed out by this time. But yeah, not often that you can find a Swedish brewed Scotch ale, but we have had some very nice kind of malty leaning beers from Nils in the past, and to do something that is both Scottish and Swedish, considering the channel's heritage, I thought was very fitting for this milestone review. So yeah, always nice to return to Nils. Let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Nils Bryggeri before, and we will probably add some more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. You can have a look at the playlist of beers from different countries. You will find this one in the Swedish beer playlist. And the channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on your hometown, your state, whatever you like, and you will find things. But the support you give the channel is hugely appreciated, and I hope that you guys continue to enjoy the videos. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then for Nils Bryggeri. So, the Nils Brewery was formed back in 1996, which makes it one of the older Swedish craft breweries. But the brewery was originally based in Kungsholm in Stockholm, and it had the name Kungsholmens Kvarterbryggeri. In 1998 though, Carl David Sundberg, who is well known in the steel industry here in Sweden, took control of the company, and it was this point in time that the beers were rebranded under the name Nils Oskar. They continued to experiment over the next few years and develop new styles and things like that, and to grow their capacity, but by 2006 they'd outgrown their brewery in Kungsholmen, and so they moved to the Ternu Manor at Frängskällen in Nyköpping, which is to the south of Stockholm, as I mentioned earlier. And they were also producing their own malt at this facility as well. But the brand is actually based on Carl's grandfather, Nils Oskar Sundberg, who was from a village called Brandon in the Norrbotten region of Sweden, which is a little bit further north, if memory serves me correctly. But this area had a lot of timber and mining activities, but there was a tough economic period in the late 1800s, which really hit the area hard. So in 1882, at the age of 17, Nils Oskar receives a ticket to go to the USA from an immigrant relative who owned a farm over there. So he went over the Atlantic, he worked there for 18 years, initially working in a kitchen. But during his time in the US, he caught typhus. He also studied business English at the Bryant and Stratton Business College in Chicago, and the principal actually thought extremely highly of Nils' work ethic and honesty while he was there. But later on, in 1900, Nils returned to Sweden and married his wife Ida, and they eventually had 4 sons together, and they established a family farm at Brändön, which is where the Ternu Manor and Nils Oskar Brewery and Distillery is located. But when forming the brewery, Carl David Sundberg was inspired by the stories that Nils Oskar had brought back from the US, and so he felt that it was natural to name his brewery after his relative. But since 2020, the brewery has been under new ownership, and a group called known as the Sörmlands Näste took over ownership of the brewery. So Rolf Lidal is now the chairman of the company, and Henrik Kihlberg, I think we would pronounce it, is the CEO. And they've been continuing to brew more beers, and I think the capacity of the brewery has been expanded in quite recent times as well. But as of October 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 40 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and like I said to you, in my experience, these guys tend to be pretty good when it comes to the more malty side of things. I haven't tried too many lighter beers from them when I think about it though, but yeah, the malty beers that I've had have been quite nice. The last beer we reviewed from these guys was the 25th anniversary barley wine, if I remember correctly, and that was pretty nicely done, I thought. So yeah, when it comes to these more malty, old school traditional type beers, the Nils Oskar offerings are pretty decent in my experience. So yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about the Nils Oskar Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on their social media to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, you can check out some of my older reviews, or you can check out the Untappd page as well to learn a little bit more about some of the different beers that they've done. But yeah, let's get on and actually have a look at this beer itself. So like I said to you earlier, I'm not sure exactly when I bought this beer, but then as I always say, you know, if a Swedish brewed Scotch ale comes out, or if I see a Scotch ale from any country that is not Scotland, or you know, if I just see a Scotch ale from anywhere, you know, I will get it. I love trying Scotch ales from different places. But yeah, you can see the artwork on this one is what we've come to expect from Nils Oskar. There you can see a picture of him there. We also have the silver Nils Oskar bottle cap. Let me just bring that up so the camera focuses on it. There you are. That's nice. But yeah, 330ml bottle. Not sure what I paid for this one actually. But yeah, it tells you on the back here, we translate. So the Wee Heavy is a strong Scottish ale which is robust and dark with a powerful malt body. What's the word? Passa bra. It fits well. That's what I was looking for. It fits well both with you know, a filling lunch or dinner, or with some aged cheese, and it's as a companion's drink or a company drink. Drink it with your friends, basically is what it's saying. Sällskapsdryck när den är som bäst. So yeah, drink it with friends when it's nice. So yeah, as we said earlier, 8% Wee Heavy this one, or 8% Scotch ale. Wee Heavy, I believe, was a term that was coined by the Americans when they took the Scotch ales over there and started playing with them. So yeah, to give you a little bit of background on the Scotch ales before we taste this one. The Scotch ales in Scotland always used the shilling system. So there was 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 shilling. There were also 160s. So shilling was what was used with the pound before it was decimalised and became pence. So the idea was that it referred to the tax on the beer. So there was more malt the higher up the scale you went, so you had more alcohol, and thus you had to pay more tax on it. So yeah, you had the 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 shillings, and then the 160. Most modern American brewed Scotch ales are based on the sort of 80, 90 shilling kind of recipe, but yeah, quite a few of them are like 160 shillings as well. So yeah, that's the basic history of it. But the Wee Heavy, I believe, was a term coined by the Americans when they took it over to the States. I've never heard folk talking about Wee Heavies in Scotland in my experience. I asked my dad about that too, and he said the same thing. He hadn't really heard that term. But yeah, 330ml bottle, this one, 8% ABV, so I think this one probably is going to be somewhere along the lines of an 80, 90 shilling sort of beer. But yeah, we'll have a look at it and see how we go. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. Been a good while since I've had a Scotch ale, so this will be pretty nice. So that looks good. That does look good. Yeah, there we are. So before the head disappears on this one, you can see that this beer poured with about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say, kind of slightly beigey coloured head. There are one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there, and a few little ones going up toward that head, which has now incidentally faded away to just be a very thin foamy layer. But you do have a nice ring just around the edge of the glass there with this one, so it looks pretty good. Yeah, in terms of the colour of this one, it looks pretty nice, and I will say appearance wise this beer is pretty much in line with what you would expect from a Scotch ale. Some of them can be a little bit more kind of cloudy than this and a little bit more opaque, but yeah, there are a few factors there. So yeah, for me, this one has a lovely kind of dark, kind of chestnutty mahogany type colour. If you shine the light through it, you do get a nice kind of ruby edge to it. And yeah, for me, the Scotch ales, yeah, they will always be like a dark mahogany kind of chestnut type colour. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in can affect the colour of the beer too. When it comes to the more kind of brown sugary and brown beers like this, that can have an effect, but when it comes to the black beers like the stouts and things, it doesn't tend to have. But we know this is not a barrel aged Scotch ale, we know it is just kind of a regular one. So yeah, most of the colour in this one will be down to the different kinds of malt base and things like that. So yeah, it looks very, very nice, this one. Certainly not the darkest Scotch ale that I've come across, but yeah, it certainly does look the part. 1 or 2 big carbonation bubbles sticking to the side, and as I said earlier, just 1 or 2 heading up toward the bottom of the head there. But appearance wise, it looks as you'd expect. Let's take a closer look at the aroma of this one and just see how we go. Yeah, that does smell pretty nice, I have to say. Yeah. So, first impression of this one is, it actually has quite a nice little bit of a roasty toasty backbone to it. You've got the brown sugars you expect. There is a wee bit of an almost chocolatiness to this one, which is kind of interesting. For me, the Scotch ale shouldn't really have a kind of chocolatey character to it. That's another story. There's a little bit of hoppiness and a little bit of a soft kind of fruity character. As I've said too, for me there is a big difference between the American brewed Scotch ales and the Scottish brewed Scotch ales. The Scottish ones tend to have a little bit more of a dry fruity character to them, you know, like prunes and dates and stuff like this. Whereas the American fruitiness tends to be a bit more oily and round and sweet. Whereas the malt base in the Scottish one tends to have a little bit of a roasty, toasty and grainy character. Whereas the malt base on the Swedish ones tends to be a little bit more kind of, yeah, the malt base on the Swedish ones tends to be a little bit more, or the American ones, sorry, I'm thinking is this one Swedish. The malt base on the American ones tend to be a little bit more just kind of bright and sweeter. But this beer, it actually does smell pretty close to the Scottish brewed one. So I think we can safely say this is going to be a more traditional Scotch ale, which is a good thing. I like it when they try to, mimic what we have back in Scotland. And I will say it is pretty close to that. So let's break it down and just describe the aroma for you a little bit more in depth. So, yeah, aroma wise, the backbone of this beer is really nice. So you've got that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust coming out of the beer. And again, I really like that. So yeah, roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust in there. There's some really nice, I would say, you've got a lovely kind of almost brown rye bready character on top of that. It does have a wee bit more graininess to it. It doesn't smell wholemeal, but yeah, roasty toast, like well-fired bread crust, some nice kind of sweet rye bread on top of it. You do have a little bit of a kind of, there is a little bit of a woody note to this one too, which is kind of interesting toward the front of the nose. But on top of that, you can smell the brown sugars, and it's interesting with this one. The brown sugars are quite kind of toasty, not overly leathery, and again, this is the thing, the thing that will give you a more leathery brown sugary character in these beers is the length of your wort boil, but the brown sugars in this one are quite toasted. and you can smell in the middle of the palate, or the middle of the nose. Oh, doing that a lot in these videos these days. I must be losing my marbles a bit, which wouldn't surprise me. But on top of that, you've got this really nice, yeah, on top of the more toasty caramel, you've got this more kind of highly caramelized, slightly treacly type note. In the middle of the nose, you do get quite a sweet, straight up oily caramel, but there's also a bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity note to this beer as well, which again I really do quite enjoy. Yeah, aroma wise, this is very, very nice. Yeah, it works. It works. So, I think that covers everything we need to say about the kind of malty side of this one. But for me, it's the roasty toastiness of the brown sugars that make it a more Scottish type Scotch ale rather than an American one. It'd be a bit more oily, and it would be a little bit less kind of treacly than it is if it was a more American one. But we'll see how that turns out when we actually taste it. It could be quite different in the actual flavour. On the hoppy side of things, it's kind of interesting too. There's a little touch of earthiness in there and a little bit of herbal character. I do wonder if it's maybe using English Bramling's Cross, which is quite a good hop for the more traditional Scotch ale. It's actually an English hop that gives you this nice little bit of fruity character, because it smells quite familiar, I have to say. But yeah, there's a little bit of earthy character in there. There's a wee bit of a herbal note. You are getting a bit of a more floral character, and it's a wee bit oily, but also some nice kind of grassy notes as well. I think that goes together really nice. A bit of an oily, grassy note and a little bit of a sort of floral type thing too. Yeah, I think the green component is quite nice in this one. Again, I don't think this is American hopped, or I wouldn't be surprised if there was like two hops, one English, one American. I think Bramling's Cross and maybe something else could be in this. On the fruity side of things, it's got a little bit of a kind of sharper raisiny note at the top. You do get some juicier plum underneath that, and you are getting some of the more dried fruity characters, like a datey, pruny type thing as well. There is a little bit of a black currant to it at the same time. So yeah, the fruity notes are quite interesting. There is a wee bit of American sweetness to the fruit, but overall, I think it's quite nice, and it is quite similar to the Scottish brewed Scotch ales that I've had. Yeah, this should be quite interesting. So let's have a wee taste of this and see what we get. So as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma before you get stuck in, but yeah, it's time. So this one is the Wee Heavy, coming in at 8% ABV from Nils Bryggeri in Nyköpping, a bit to the south of Stockholm. Yeah, happy review number 3333. Slange, Skull, cheers, heavy metal, hail Satan, all that jazz. There we go. Ooh. This is interesting. First impression of it is, flavour profile is all there, but the mouthfeel of this is really quite different. It is really quite different to the other Scotch ales I've had. Yeah, first thing I'm noticing about this is just how clean it is. And I've commented on this before with Nordic beers. One of the things you quite often get with beers from Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Iceland. Denmark maybe not quite as much, but yeah, the beers from the northern countries, if you like, you can feel the cleanliness and the purity of the water, and you can feel that in this one. And we do have pure water in Scotland, of course. We've got very good water there, but this just feels different. It just feels more Nordic, if you like. Yeah. And maybe as it warms up, that will change a little bit, of course. But yeah, the flavour profile of this beer, I think, is really well done. And like I say, it is really more like a traditional Scottish brewed Scotch ale, this one. So thumbs up to Nils for that. He's done a good job with this. But I will say, having had a couple of sips of it now, I think it does thicken up a wee bit. Once your mouth adjusts to it, you can appreciate the mouthfeel a bit more. But I still do think this is a bit lighter. But yeah, lovely stuff. Yeah, where do we go with this? The flavour profile of this is pretty solid. It's got a nice aftertaste to it as well. It does give you that bit more grainy, toasty, traditional type Scotch ale vibe into the aftertaste. So let's break this down. Middle third of your palate, you can absolutely feel the backbone of the beer is that more roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust. And as I say, that works really nicely in this particular beer. So, on top of that, you get a little bit of a kind of rye bready note, and the rye bread is actually kind of quite dry in this. But yeah, roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust that gets drier the further back on the palate you go. On top of that, a bit of a rye bready layer. Then on top of that one, pardon me, you get a little bit more of a kind of sweet, like slightly sweet wholemeal bready character. Toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you might detect just a little bit of a very slightly kind of woody character coming out of the beer, maybe even a slight little hint of tobacco or something. But then on top of that, we've got the brown sugary notes coming out. So yeah, on top of that kind of brown bread, that kind of brown bready layer, you can feel the brown sugar start to come out of the beer, and it's quite interesting. So the base layer of the brown sugars, for me, there's a little bit of that kind of toasty, caramelly note to it, but on top of that, you have got a bit more of a kind of leathery note. And the way you get leathery brown sugars out of a beer, of course, is to give it a slightly longer wort boil. I don't know what wort boil they'll have put on this, but it tells me it will have been a couple of hours. I think they will have put this on a slightly longer wort boil to make this beer for sure. So yeah, the leather, as I say, a bit of a toasty caramel layer, then a slightly more leathery one, and then in the dead centre of your palate with this beer, you can feel there's just a little circle, and it has this lovely sweet caramelly note. And then on top of all of that, you start to get a more kind of McVitie's digestive, biscuity sort of thing, which again I think comes out very, very well. Yeah, I like that. I really do like how that goes together. But yeah, the brown sugars in this, I think, are really quite nicely done. Yeah, it works. It does work very, very well for sure. And it grows on me the more this beer. I think the further into the aftertaste, you get a bit more of a woodiness and almost a very you just get a little bit more dryness from the almost woody character that you get out of this beer. But I think we've said everything we need to about the middle third of the palate. Let's look at the back third of the palate. So the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build up there. And then the base of the back third of the palate, there's a bit, again, that roasty, toasty, bread crusty character lingers there. It feels a little bit drier. You've got that kind of rye bready layer, which feels a little bit taller, and again, a wee bit more drier and grainy. Then you've got the wholemeal bread on top of that. So yeah, back layer, the back third of your palate, the flavour is definitely taller. Then on top of all of that, you've got a nice kind of yeasty sort of thing. So yeah, the way that goes together is really, really nice. Yeah, but definitely, yeah, back third of the palate, the flavour's taller. Then as you come further forward, it just condenses down a wee bit, and everything kind of squashes together. So yeah, it's good. On the hoppy side of things, then, back corners of the palate, definitely a good little bit of earthiness there, and that to me indicates the presence of an English hop. The earthiness is just that little bit darker. But let's see, I think that I've got a feeling there's a bit of Brandling's Cross in this. I'd love to know what hops they have used in this, right enough. But yeah, as you move further forward, it has got a little bit of that herbal character. Again, that to me signifies the presence of some sort of English hop. And then yeah, as you push further forward to the front corners of the palate, there's a wee bit of a floral quality. And the floral notes are actually a little touch spicy. which makes me wonder, could there be a wee bit of an American hop in there as well? I think the majority of this is English hop though, but then round the front curve of the palate you've got a little bit of a lighter grassy note, and it's quite a wet but very slightly oily grassiness that you get out of this one. So yeah. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think is really, really nice. Yeah, the green component on this is pretty much as you expect. As I say, I'm pretty sure there's an English hop in this, but it works. It does work, and it's not uncommon for Scotch ales to use something like Bramling's Cross or whatever. Yeah. So front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of the beer. The border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get a little bit of a bready build up there. There's a wee bit of a bread crusty sort of thing. Then the base of that front third of your palate is a little bit more smooth and kind of brown bready. Again, it's almost got a little bit of a fruit loaf type flavour to it. But on top of that bready layer, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, the fruity side of the beer in this is quite interesting. Because when you take it in on the top, you do get a little bit of that sharper raisiny note, but yeah, it is a lot more of the kind of dry fruity characters that I was talking about. Again, another characteristic of the Scottish brewed Scotch ales rather than the American ones. So when you take the beer in, you do have a wee bit of the raisiny note and the more juicy plum underneath, but as you go further down, it really gives you more of a kind of pruny note. Definitely more of a kind of pruny note, and that mixes in with this kind of bread, like fruit loafy sort of thing at the back of the front third of your palate. But then yeah, as you move further forward, it gives you a little bit of a dry figgy quality, and as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, you do have a little bit of a more kind of you've got a little bit of a more black curranty type note, and then an oily blackberry on top of that. So yeah, I like the way that that goes together with this beer. I think it is really, really nicely done in that sense. So yeah, I like this one. I do like how it goes together for sure. It is like a properly Scottish brewed Scotch ale. I would say this one's a wee bit more kind of roast, like the bread crust is a bit heavier on this one than some of the other Scotch ales that I've come across, but it's an interesting take on the style. If I think about it in the kind of context of the where this style would lie, it is more like a 90 shilling, this one. It is kind of at the high end. I wouldn't say it's 160 because it's not quite as oily and thick and things as you would expect from the 160 shilling ones. But yeah, it's almost kind of between a 90 shilling and a 160, somewhere in the middle. But more of a 90 shilling in terms of its flavour profile, to be honest with you. So yeah, interesting stuff. This Scotch ale for sure. Let's round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, mouthfeel wise, I would say that this beer, it's interesting because it is pushing toward the top end of mid-body, but at the same time it feels very, very clean. It starts to feel thicker the further into the aftertaste you go, but yeah, mid-bodied, still very, very clean. Carbonation is again quite smooth in this. This beer, it has a good little bit of roasty, I don't know if you can call it roastiness, it's not black malt, but it's got a good bit of toastiness and dryness to the malt base, but you get the brown sweet sugars out of it a bit later on. There's a good little bit of hoppy bitterness in there as well. I think this one might be about 25-ish IBUs, but yeah, as I say, the dryness might give you the impression it's a wee bit more. Good sweetness in the malt base, and you've got that lovely oily fruity character to this beer as well. So like I say, this gets a big thumbs up from me. Really like this one. So yeah, it's been definitely cool to review a wee heavy from Nils Oscar. Actually, I think this is pretty good. So I think we can leave it at that for this review. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Nils Oscar as well, and we will definitely return to these guys at some point in the very near future. Till the next time, slange it, skull, cheers, have a go at some of Nils Oscar Bryggeri's beers, and the wee heavy is definitely worth a shout as well. Till the next time, check out my social media, check out theirs. See you soon. Slange it, skull, and cheers. Thank you for all your support over the last 9.5 years. Crazy.